This case will haunt you. In 2014, Trevor Doyle, a quiet mechanic from a small Arizona town, vanished without a trace. 3 days later, his mutilated body was discovered just steps from his own home, inside an abandoned trailer no one dared enter. What unfolded next exposed a hidden torture chamber, a missing woodcarver named Arthur Bell, and a deranged former surgeon named Jonah West, who had been living under a stolen identity. This isn't fiction. This is a real nightmare. If you're into chilling true crime stories, mysterious disappearances, and shocking psychological twists, you're in the right place. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and stay active in the comments to support deep dive content like this. Your support helps uncover even more stories that most people never hear about. Now, let's dive into 3 Days of Hell, the brutal execution in a trailer park. You won't believe what was hiding in that basement. Trevor Doyle was a quiet man living a quiet life in the dusty outskirts of Pine Hollow, Arizona. At 36 years old, he had no wife, no children, and no real enemies, just a small circle of coworkers, a rusted pickup truck, and a trailer that creaked every time the wind picked up. He worked as a mechanic at the local auto shop and rarely missed a shift. When he didn't show up on June 17, 2014, people noticed at first. It didn't seem like a crisis. Maybe he overslept or decided to take a personal day. But when the shop tried calling and got no response, concern began to grow. A friend from the park walked over to check on him. Trevor's trailer door was slightly ajar, swaying gently with the breeze. Inside, everything appeared normal to normal. The lights were off, the place was silent, and nothing looked overturned. But there was an eerie stillness that raised hairs on the back of the neck. His bed was unmade, a half-eaten sandwich sat on the kitchen counter, and his work boots were still by the door. His phone lay on the floor, cracked and dead. His keys were on the table. There were no signs of a break-in. No blood, no obvious clue that anything violent had taken place. Still, the police were called, and a missing person report was filed. Officers knocked on neighboring trailers, but no one had seen or heard anything unusual. The last confirmed sighting of Trevor was the night before, around 10:30 p.m., when a neighbor spotted him walking back from the corner store with a bag of snacks and a soda. Later that evening, several residents in the park reported hearing strange noises coming from Lot 41, an old trailer that had been vacant for years. It was set back from the rest of the homes, with boards over the windows and a broken porch step no one ever bothered to fix. Some said they heard loud banging. Others said they thought they heard moaning, but it was faint and short-lived. Most shrugged it off. That trailer had a reputation for being creepy. Kids dared each other to approach it at night, but no one truly believed something sinister was going on. They assumed it was just an animal, or maybe a homeless squatter. And no one checked. No one wanted to. As night fell, Trevor's disappearance became the subject of whispered speculation. The town had seen missing persons before, but something about this felt different. Too quiet, too close. The park was small, the kind of place where secrets didn't last long. But this one had just begun, and no one was ready for what it would uncover. 3 days after Trevor Doyle vanished, the unbearable stench drifting from Lot 41 became too much to ignore. A maintenance worker, assigned to clear overgrown weeds and check for pest activity, approached the long-abandoned trailer tucked at the far edge of the park. It had always been an eyesore, boards nailed unevenly across its windows, rust streaking down its sides, and a collapsed gutter that clanged in the wind. Most people avoided it, but on that morning, duty forced him. Inside, the front door creaked open with resistance, revealing a darkness thick with dust and decay. Garbage littered the floor, empty cans, wrappers, shredded insulation, and FLIs buzzed aggressively near the back hallway. The smell was sharp and unmistakable. Something had died. But what the worker found was far worse than any animal. Lying on the floor of the bathroom, curled in a grotesque position, was Trevor Doyle's body. His skin was discolored and blistered. His limbs were twisted unnaturally, and his wrists were bound tightly with barbed wire that had cut deep into the flesh. Chains secured his ankles to rusted plumbing pipes, and burns marked nearly every visible inch of his body. His face was so swollen and damaged, it was almost unrecognizable. One eye was missing. Several teeth had been removed. But the most chilling realization was that he hadn't died immediately. He had been alive for most of the horror. An autopsy later confirmed what the scene suggested. Trevor had been kept in that trailer for nearly 72 hours. He had suffered blunt force trauma, dehydration, electrocution, and prolonged torture. Multiple burns were inflicted by cigarettes and heated metal objects. The cause of death was shock combined with internal bleeding. The brutality was systematic, calculated, not chaotic. As crime scene investigators processed the trailer, they found surprisingly little DNA evidence. Whoever committed the crime had worn gloves, clean surfaces, and left almost nothing behind. Almost nothing. Near Trevor's battered body was a strange object. A small, hand-carved wooden doll, roughly 4 inches tall. Its face was sewn shut with rusted wire, and its arms were bound together behind its back. The detail was unsettling. The craftsmanship was crude but intentional. It didn't belong to Trevor. It didn't belong in the trailer. It felt like a message, something symbolic, perhaps even ritualistic. The discovery sent shockwaves through Pine Hollow. A man had been kidnapped, tortured, and executed just a stone's throw from his own home, and no one saw a thing. The illusion of safety that clung to the trailer park was shattered. Residents no longer felt like neighbors, they felt like potential targets. And somewhere out there, the killer was still watching. As the investigation deepened, detectives were left with more questions than answers. Trevor Doyle's murder was not random, it was methodical, intentional, and deeply personal. But when they looked into his background, there was little to uncover. He had no known enemies, no history of crime, and no involvement in anything that could justify such a targeted act of violence. That's when the name Caleb Marsh surfaced. Caleb had once lived just 2 trailers down from Trevor. A former security guard with a history of behavioral issues, he had been evicted from the park a year earlier after a series of complaints. Residents remembered him as unstable, prone to loud rants at night, and unsettling behavior during the day. Some claimed they'd seen him dissecting dead animals in his shed. Others recalled overhearing bizarre conversations he had with himself. What made Caleb stand out was that he had a tense relationship with Trevor, stemming from a noise complaint that led to Caleb being fined and later evicted. When investigators questioned him, he was living off the grid in a cabin deep in the Cactus Hills. His appearance was disheveled, but he spoke calmly, even cooperatively. He admitted to disliking Trevor, but denied any involvement in the murder. The detectives searched his property and found dozens of disturbing sketches, detailed illustrations of chained bodies, instruments of torture, and what appeared to be floor plans of trailers that looked eerily similar to Lot 41. Most damning of all, one sketch depicted a man with barbed wire around his wrists. Despite the chilling evidence, Caleb had an airtight alibi. Surveillance footage placed him at a gas station 60 miles away during the exact window of Trevor's captivity. He had receipts, time-stamped interactions, and a dated bus ticket. It was frustrating. Caleb looked like the perfect suspect too. Perfect, but legally, he was in the clear. With Caleb ruled out, attention turned to the strange wooden doll found next to Trevor's body. It wasn't a mass-produced item, and after checking local vendors and flea markets, detectives traced its origin to a small stand run by an elderly man named Arthur Bell, known locally as the woodcarver. He was a quiet man who sold handmade trinkets at weekend markets. When police tried to contact him, he was nowhere to be found. His phone went unanswered, his booth at the flea market sat abandoned, and his small desert home appeared untouched. For weeks, no signs of struggle, no signs of recent life, just dust, silence, and shadows. And in the corner of the woodcarver's home, sitting quietly on a shelf, was another doll identical to the one found beside Trevor. Arthur Bell's remote desert cabin was the kind of place no one stumbled upon by accident. Surrounded by cacti and scrub, it stood miles away from the nearest paved road, with only tire tracks in the dirt hinting that anyone had been there in weeks. The front door was unlocked, but inside, everything looked frozen in time. Dishes in the sink, mail on the table, and a thin layer of dust on every surface. Investigators knew right away that Arthur hadn't vanished recently. He had likely been missing for weeks, possibly months. But where he went or what happened to him was still unknown. As they searched the small home, something caught a detective's eye in the bedroom, an uneven patch of wall paneling, slightly darker than the rest. When pressed, the panel creaked open, revealing a narrow passage leading to a steep, spiral staircase made of metal. The air below was colder, damp, and thick with the smell of mold and rust. What they found beneath the cabin wasn't just shocking, it was monstrous. The basement was large, soundproofed, and lined with shelves full of surgical tools, ropes, syringes, and stained clothing. Chains hung from the ceiling, and the floor was covered in old newspapers soaked with dried blood. Along one wall were dozens of photographs, grainy, candid shots of trailer park residents taken without their knowledge. Some showed them walking to their mailboxes, washing their cars, or talking to neighbors. They had no idea they were being watched. In the center of the room was a crude operating table made of plywood, covered in dried blood. Nearby was a workbench, where more of the small wooden dolls sat in various stages of completion. Each one had a stitched face, bound arms, and unique markings carved into the back. One doll matched the one found beside Trevor Doyle's body exactly. Then came the freezer, tucked into the far corner and sealed with duct tape. The large chest freezer hummed quietly. When opened, it revealed two severed human hands, vacuum-sealed in plastic. Fingerprint analysis later confirmed that they belonged to two men reported missing in the last 5 years from counties surrounding Pine Hollow. Their cases had never been connected until now. The horror unfolding below Arthur Bell's cabin turned the Trevor Doyle case on its head. This wasn't a one-time killing. It was a pattern, methodical, hidden, and spreading across the region. Without anyone realizing, the basement wasn't just a crime scene. It was a trophy room, a workshop, and possibly the burial ground of a serial killer. But if Arthur Bell was nowhere to be found, one terrifying question remained. Who had been living in his home, carving dolls, and stalking victims in silence? The search for the truth behind Trevor Doyle's murder led to a shocking revelation. Fingerprints collected from the surgical tools and the freezer inside the basement did not match Arthur Bell, the missing woodcarver. Instead, They matched a man named Jonah West, a former trauma surgeon who had vanished from public records 5 years earlier after a series of investigations into his conduct at a private hospital in Colorado. Jonah had lost his medical license for performing unauthorized procedures on patients without consent. After disciplinary action and a pending lawsuit, he simply disappeared. Now, the pieces fell into place. Jonah West had assumed the identity of Arthur Bell, likely killing him and taking over his remote cabin as a base of operations. The woodcarver's reputation as a quiet, isolated craftsman had helped Jonah blend in. No one questioned his strange appearance or his growing obsession with carving grotesque figurines. In the quiet stillness of the desert, Jonah found the perfect place to hide and to kill. Investigators followed a trail of small but telling clues: purchases of woodworking tools, fuel receipts, and ATM withdrawals, all pointing toward a quiet storage unit just outside Las Vegas. When they opened it, they found another layer of horror. Inside were boxes filled with personal items from unknown victims: wallets, watches, glasses, torn clothing. Most disturbing of all was a wooden display case holding 12 hand-carved dolls, each labeled with initials and dates. Only one of those dolls matched Trevor Doyle. The others belonged to people who were never officially reported missing. Jonah West had been operating in the shadows for years, crossing state lines, targeting isolated individuals, and leaving behind almost no evidence. He moved in silence, lived off the grid, and studied his victims for weeks before striking. The trailer park was ideal, tight-knit enough to avoid suspicion, but remote enough for screams to go unnoticed. Jonah was arrested at a rest stop 2 states away after surveillance identified his truck. He was found with a surgical kit, gloves, rope, and another wooden doll in the passenger seat. He didn't resist. During questioning, he said nothing. No confession, no explanation, just silence. He was tried and found guilty on multiple counts of murder, including that of Trevor Doyle. He was sentenced to life without parole. Despite the conviction, the case left a lasting scar on Pine Hollow. The trailer where Trevor was tortured was demolished. The residents never truly recovered. And even now, detectives believe there may be more victims, people who vanished without a trace, whose families never found closure, their stories buried beneath the sand and silence. Jonah West left behind